Arrow Season 4, Episode 21, Monument Point. Now, coming off of the last episode, which I think was a really good episode, I enjoyed this one as well. I think they did a surprisingly good job with the flashbacks. Every once in a while, the flashbacks are okay. It wasn't like crazy phenomenal or anything, but it didn't take up a bunch of time. It was basically somebody got shot here, somebody got shot there. They took the totem, and then we got to actually see the scene where I still can't remember the woman's name, where her eyes were glowing because I guess it was because she was holding onto the totem. It just kind of gave her power as well. So it kind of makes me wonder now if she ended up having to be killed maybe because she turned evil or something. Because once they did the thing where it's like, oh, go to Russia, I'll go to Star City if you die, and I'll tell your family what happened, and if I die, you go to Russia. So ever since they introduced that, it was like, okay, well, maybe that's how we got to Russia, is of course because she died. But now they're kind of playing around with the idea because, of course, they did the glimpse in the last episode, and then we find out that Oliver's eyes turned yellow when he was repelling Darhk's power. So it's like, okay, maybe she was fighting against Damien Darhk, and then in this episode, we actually see it's that the power from the totem, or she wasn't fighting Damien Darhk, but Ryder. But in this episode, we see that it's actually the power from the totem. For whatever reason, like I said, I guess it's just because she was the one touching it now, so proof, she's getting the powers. But maybe she loses control or something like that, which wouldn't make a lot of sense because we haven't seen that yet, and it would be really random if, Ryder, he's in complete control of it, and Damien Darhk is in complete control, and then she's just like, oh, I can't control the power. I would kind of hate it if that happened, but who knows? Something happens there. She gets the power, and that's kind of all we get. So I think the flashbacks were nice, just great little snippets that didn't take up a bunch of time. The whole thing was pretty much, we got to do this, we got to do that. It was pretty fast-paced, and they just kind of moved through it because, getting to the season finale, more important things to deal with, in the present timeline, which, once again, I enjoyed. I thought this was a fun episode. We got to see Felicity's dad come back, which I think actually led to some surprisingly good dialogue. I figured I'd enjoy it because I actually liked his character. And, this new dynamic really that we never saw out of all these seasons, it was just Felicity and her mom. So her dad comes back in, and we actually get to see a more dad side of him where he's like, I may have been a bad father, but I'm still your father, and as long as you're alive, I want the world to survive so that you can actually live in it. So I thought it was pretty cool again to see this other side of him, and he actually takes a bullet for her towards the end of the episode. I was like, alright, this is actually pretty fun getting to see this side of his character, and how he is, of course, still the villain, but, he still cares for his daughter. He's just a really, really crappy dad. And we also still get to see how his horrible actions still affect, both Felicity and her mother, because her mother is dealing with Lance, and how he signed, or he was planning on signing, like, the affidavit saying that he had no idea Laurel was Black Canary and stuff. And I didn't really like that scene. That kind of annoyed me in this episode because she was kind of getting on his case and stuff, and I understood because they had that really early on when they had like their first big argument about breaking up and stuff because of Felicity's dad, where it was like, the last person that lied to me that I was really serious with is like a crazy super criminal, and he'd like destroyed my daughter, or at least, he kind of destroyed my daughter's life because he just took off, and so it was just me and her. So I still completely understand why she has such a big issue with people telling lies and stuff. But I was like, this is a very, very different situation. Like, the first time that happened, it made a lot of sense. I can't remember exactly what he was hiding from her, but I think it was close to the same thing, a little bit. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was him, working with Damien Darhk, I believe. So, that was a little different, and even then it was kind of like, even then it was kind of, in between, where it's like, I can see where she's coming from, but also the blackmail thing and stuff like that, you can see where he's coming from, dealing with someone who can, like, throw people across rooms and stuff. So even then, it was like, okay, I see both sides. But this time I was like, I feel like she's on his case for no good reason, to be totally honest. Like, she kind of pushed him to do this. And like when he says, like, this is me signing away my badge, and it probably won't be, just it'll be like a surprise little twist where it's like, he told the truth. Like, I did know that, she was a vigilante, and I supported that idea because I thought she did good for the city. It'll probably be fine, but I felt it wasn't worth the risk, and it's like I didn't feel like he was doing anything wrong. It was like I felt like she was kind of pushing him, really, like he said, to sign his badge away. I'm like, that's such a crazy risk to have, where it's like, oh, lie about this little thing, or say, yeah, I knew my daughter was a vigilante, which is super illegal. And not only that, but that would bring up a lot of questions because they could easily do an investigation because it's not rocket science. I mean, it's a superhero show. In anything where people are superheroes, it's like, all right, this person's a superhero and they have three best friends, and there are maybe one or two other superheroes. One of these or both or two of these three best friends are the other superheroes. Like, that's not hard to come up with. They make it impossible, in superhero shows. So maybe they wouldn't do that because no one ever figures anything out unless they're specifically told in superhero shows. But realistically speaking, I feel like that would just lead to an investigation. Like, okay, there's this, he knew about this, so maybe he does know who the Green Arrow is, he knows who the other people are as well. And I'm like, I just felt like she was pushing him way too hard for something that was so minimal. And it's like, what's he gonna do? Like, if he signs this thing, he can't, it's not like, oh, I'll just be a cop somewhere else. He's done. I mean, maybe he could somewhere else, but he'd be starting all over again. And I'm just like, I feel like this is like way too much of a thing for her to be putting on him in this episode. So that bugged me a little bit because I'm like, it's such a little lie. And like, she was like, there are no little lies. So it's like, that would have been like, sometimes you can't be like, oh, it's black and white because somebody else in the past screwed up. And as he said, he was like, I'm not that guy. But she still kind of pressured him into it a little bit. So I was a little annoyed by that. But like I said, hopefully it works out. I'd be really mad if it didn't, and it would make me kind of not like her character. And I think she's really funny, especially when she says stuff that she shouldn't say to Felicity, like about her and Felicity's dad having sex and crazy stuff like that. Like, it's funny to watch that, but I'd kind of hate her if he couldn't be captain or even like a cop anymore because of what him signing the thing saying like I knew Laurel was the Black Canary, even if it does honor her in some way. They kind of already did that with the funeral stuff, and I don't know, I'd be a little mad about it, but that was the only thing that really bugged me. Other than that, I thought everything else was really cool. We got Anarchy back, which was a nice surprise. He had some weird dialogue. He was calling Thea mama and mommy, which I thought was weird. I don't remember him doing that before, and when he said it the first time, it was like, okay, he's like a little bit surprised, like, oh, mama, or, because some people say that as a phrase, and it's like, because he found out who Thea was outside of her costume. And then he specifically was like, I'm trying to protect you, mommy, or something like that. And I was like, I don't remember him saying weird stuff like that in any of the other episodes. He's shown up, I want to say 3 times now. I want to say this is his 4th time. It's either his 3rd or 4th time. It's like, I don't ever remember him saying weird dialogue like that. So that kind of caught me off guard a little bit. But he was still really cool. He had like the, the 3 nunchuck type of deal, which I thought was pretty sweet. Super unrealistic because he had like that little staff, and apparently it was supposed to extend into 2 other full staffs. And I was like, well, that's physically not a thing, but whatever. It's still a cool fight scene, so I enjoyed that. They kind of left it somewhat ambiguous as to whether or not he actually killed his boyfriend, whose name, of course, I don't remember. Like, sometimes I just forget minor people or people that just I just don't really care about that much, honestly. And he's definitely one of those people where it's like, okay, they had the little suspense thing and he's taking the pills. But they made it seem like they actually killed him off, so I don't know if they did. It could be one of those things where she thought he was dead because he got zapped and, adrenaline and stuff, but, I mean, she felt for his pulse. So they could pull any number of things like, oh, he had surgery and he doesn't have a pulse on one side. Something weird like that. Because I have that. That's the only reason I brought that up as an example, because I have that on one side. But I don't know. I would assume he died because of the way they played it. But that was kind of the end. It was like they fought and she couldn't stop him and he escaped. So he's still in like the thing. They stopped the bombs though, so maybe he'll try again in the next episode. But they fought and they stopped the bombs and he killed the guy, seemingly. So now she's kind of broken down, still trapped because no one knows where the F she is. They still think she's like on vacation and they can't reach her. So it's pretty crazy. But they have found out that there is an underground dome, so they'll most likely rescue her either in the next episode or the finale. And I don't believe the next episode is the finale. It could be because once again, whenever I catch up on Hulu, they don't do promos unless you like search for it. So I was like, screw it, I don't care, I'll just watch the next episode. So I don't know if the next one's the finale or not, but I actually enjoyed this one. I thought it had some good action. Ending, if it's not, the next one isn't the finale, then it should be a crazy 2 episodes, but I would assume the next episode is the finale because despite everything they've done, a nuke still drops on the city. And it was a really interesting moment because they have it where it's like, all right, we have this one nuke that launched, and Felicity's dad is keeping all the other nukes kind of trapped. And so it's like, all right, everything's seemingly fine. We just got to figure out how to deal with this. And it's launched, and it's like, it's going to go towards this city. What are we going to do? And when they mentioned the GPS thing, I was like, okay, they may or may not have enough time for it to hit water, which would still kill a buttload of people, and plus that would just destroy the water. Like, you can't drink that water, obviously. But the way they did it, and she had to send it to another city. I hope that they utilize that a lot, because that's, technically it was on Felicity to choose what city it went to, and it was going towards one city. And Lila mentions, like, if it went here, it would have destroyed millions of people, and instead it destroyed hundreds of thousands of people. And still a huge deal. I mean, a nuke dropped on the city, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. And she redirected it, because technically it's like, she was literally in the position of the needs of the few versus the needs of the many. And the few were still a lot of freaking people. So I hope they really utilize that moment for her character. And that's kind of coupled on top of the fact that she got kicked out of Palmer Tech. Like, she's no longer the... I don't know what her position exactly was. I don't know if they called her, like, the director of, the company. But she's no longer there. And so she got kicked out of that in the middle of the episode. And then the nuke drops because she got kicked out. She couldn't get the piece, so they had to steal it and only got the 90%. So because of stuff like that, there's a lot of blame that could kind of be put on her. And I was thinking when I was watching, I was like, in between all this stuff they were doing, what was she doing? Like, it was literally her day job was to work for the company. What was she doing that was so tough? Like, I know recently, of course, they lost Laurel, but they had a full episode or so, and I think I guess that was right after she decided to leave the team, and that's when the whole B thing happened. But that was still, like, a couple weeks ago as far as episodes. And it's like, what has she been doing since that happened? Like, has she just not been there during the day at all? Because even though they've been working around the clock, they haven't been working literally around the clock to stop Damien Darhk. So I was really surprised that somehow there was just never any time whatsoever for her to have this conversation, which was kind of mentioned a while back, like even before the B thing. It was like, this technology works, because she used it on herself before they even really put it out to the rest of the company. And so it was like they had a ton of time to figure that stuff out, like, oh, we don't want this to be free. So it was just interesting. It's like, what else were they doing? Like, we don't ever see anything about what she's doing unless it involves Curtis, who also didn't show up. I thought he could have easily been the one to help them steal the thing, but I was kind of surprised that he didn't show up in this episode. When they mentioned, like, oh, it's in his lab, I was like, oh, they could call Curtis, because he's literally helped the team out before, and he's a good friend of theirs. He could just be like, boom, got it, and no one would know anything, because they don't monitor his lab. I would assume he'd be the one really checking up on it, but he doesn't show up, so he doesn't really get to help him. So I'm hoping that they utilize kind of the crappy moments for Felicity in this episode to, I don't know what they do with her, but hopefully it will be something entertaining. Hopefully it doesn't kind of fall to the wayside and it's just like meh and no big deal, because we got to see a pretty good story with Diggle and his brother and stuff. And excuse me, he's keeping up the lie as well that he acted in self-defense against Andy, which I mentioned last time. I didn't realize that it wasn't actually self-defense, because he did, it looked, I don't know if I saw the scene wrong or something, but it did look like when he shot him, he actually had his head turned when he pulled the trigger, like he didn't mean to pull it. So when I saw it, like, at a glance, I was like, oh, it was self-defense. I couldn't tell when that happened, but apparently he actually did shoot him, so that was a bit of a surprise to me. And I was trying to give him the advice, don't lie about it, just admit what happened. And it's, you had no choice. That's just the way it was, unfortunately. He was under control, which we still don't know if there's a cure for that, because so far Andy's been killed, Thea's boyfriend seemingly has been killed as well, so all the people that matter that are under control, they just keep getting killed off. So there's really no one to test it on unless they just pull a random civilian. But I definitely enjoyed this episode. Like I said, I don't know if it leads into the finale, but based on the ending, it probably does. I mean, Damien's full on power. I don't know what Oliver and Diggle are going to be doing with a gun and an arrow against this guy. He's got, it wasn't like a little bit of power either. It was like a full on vortex was like swirling around him in like gold energy. and his eyes are glowing, and it looked like energy basically formed a medallion on his chest. So he's at like the height of mystical shaman-like power. So I don't know what to really expect for this next one, but I'm definitely excited for it. Of course, I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And I'm just going to assume that the next episode is the finale, even if it's not. But either way, I definitely want to know what you guys want to see for this next episode, and how you guys think they're even going to take out Darhk now that he has all of this power. I would assume that the answer is somehow going to be in the flashback, and we'll get to see maybe a bunch of people died and or something like that. Because there are obviously a ton of people dying on the island in the flashback right now. So maybe we'll get to see exactly how to cancel the power. Maybe Oliver will have to do the look inside himself again and think about his friends and stuff. I don't know if that'll work with the hundreds of thousands of lives channeled into dark energy inside of Damien Darhk, but I guess we'll see how that plays out, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. Like I said, definitely want to know how you guys think that's going to play out. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general, so please comment below, let me know. And thanks for watching.